Hello, I am back for Art in the AM today. I was gone last week, so I am actually going to do two letters today. If you saw in the description, I'm going to do the letter S and the letter T. And I wanted to show you back 2 weeks ago when I did the letter R. I did not finish this online. I finished it off camera, off the live video, and it was R for realism. So I chose a photo in a catalog that I had for Anna Maria Island, which is one of my most favorite places in Florida. And this was an image that was in there. And so I painted this realistic egret. I think that's what kind of bird this is, an egret. And kind of did watercolor and talked about some of the different ways to set up a composition and to make it look more realistic. And I think I actually gave 3 tips or tricks about how you can make the realistic thing that you're painting stand out. And this has probably been one of my favorite ones for the quilts from the week before. So I've been working in this journal, and it is a watercolor journal. And I like I'm going to tell you the brand name. It is U.S. Art Supply. And in my Amazon shop, I have a lot of the supplies and things that I use. And I'm pretty sure that this is one of the ones that I put in there, this journal in particular. It is 30 sheets of watercolor paper. It's 5.5 by 8.5, which I just think is a good size. And it's 140 pounds, which is a heavier weight. However, today, with the 2 letters that I'm going to be doing, I'm actually going to work off the journal and then attach the things into the journal. And I think that you'll kind of see why once I get started. So for the letter S, I wanted to do stencils. And I wanted to kind of show you the project that I was going to try to do over the weekend. And it uses stencils. And I'm just going to do that project with you. And it is from I think today is actually the last day. It's from a 2-week kind of sampler of artists, and it was all about mixed media, which if you watch here, hello, my name is Jamie, if you have not been watching, and I love mixed media, and I love all the different things that you can do with it. So the project I'm going to show to you is by, actually I don't remember who it's by. I feel like it's Jenny is her first name. I don't know. But what I did, there were 40 different projects. And this right here is the project that I'm going to do. And I'll try to think of her name. I feel like it's Jenny. But what I'm going to do is start with a piece of paper the size of my journal, which I said is 5.5 by 8.5. And I have, tell me if you collect a lot of paper. I have a lot of paper. I have like containers over there and just a lot of paper. But in particular, I have one kind of cardboard box lid, probably from like copy paper or something from a box. And it is all white paper or cream or, just like a neutral white. And it can be anything from this printed thing that I don't need anymore. I have, like notes pulled out of a journal that I don't need anymore. I have, pages that I've written on, just whatever kind. I have papers ripped out of the journal that I'm using for my portraits. Even though it has some gray on there, it has writing and typewritten things on there. I have like this little book that has like a grid on there, and like I've written, pages in there. So I will, I'll use that. I have like little sheets. I have some things that have been, printed where I've cut out things, and junk mail, definitely. I have, I don't know, this was like from some package or something. Things that I printed out that I found like misspellings, or something. Hello there, Sue. Hi, Lori. So I'm going to take one of these sheets of paper and I'm going to cut it to a 5.5 by 8.5 inch size. And I'm going to show you a couple of things as I'm doing the project based on this one. I feel like it's Jenny. If any of you are in the mixed media, what is it called? The Mastering Mixed Media? I don't think that that's it. Maybe it is. Mastering Mixed Media Expo with Tamara Laporte. Maybe you can tell me her name. I feel like it's Jenny. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera down here. So tell me if you're in that group, if you've been paying attention. I think today is the last day that you can watch the videos that are in there. And like I said, there are 40 of them. So I'm looking for my pencil. I thought I just put it back over here. Just my regular number 2 pencil. So her project is one of the ones that I wanted to do. That's so weird that I can't see my pencil that I just put over here. Maybe I have it someplace else. I thought I just put it over here. Here it is, here it is, here it is. So, I'm going to take this piece of paper. Hi there, Kathy. Jenny Grant. Yes, thank you, Sue. Sue's been paying attention. She must be in the group. Oh my goodness. There's 2 Jennies in there. That's probably why. I think this is 8.5 going exactly this way. So, I think I'm going to get both sheets out of this one that I want to do. So, to kind of go start to finish with her project, you just need something to work on. And I think she actually just starts with a piece of paper and kind of starts gluing from there. I kind of use this as the background and then I start putting things on. And I'm going to be using my matte gel medium, and it is Master's Touch. So that is, I always forget, that one is Hobby Lobby or that one's Michael's? I think that's Michael's Master's Touch. No, it's Hobby Lobby. So somebody gave this to me. I didn't even buy it because when I look at the container, it says it's $19.99. I probably would not, it gets really stuck too. I probably would not have paid that for the, I don't think, oh my goodness, it's really on there tight. I don't think there it comes. I have purchased any of the mediums. No, one of them. Anyway, I'm going to use this to glue it on there. It's nice and thick. And what Jenny does is she takes the white papers, you know, any kind of different white papers, and she just keeps them with the straight edges. And that's what I'm going to do today. I don't normally do that, I will just tell you. But I am going to start to just kind of pull a couple of the ones that I want to use. And since this has writing on there, I don't necessarily need to cover up all of it, but I'm going to. Hi there, Janet. Hi, Kathy. So I'm going to pull out a couple of these papers just to have like some variety of things that I'm using. Oh, I like this one with the little checks on it. I'm going to use that. And I think I'll use one of these grid pieces of paper. And even though that the lines on this are a little yellowish, I don't mind about that. So this is my background paper, and I'm going to let this dry as I work on the T for the texture. That is the T that we're going to work on. So I'm going to do this one first. I am going to use, I either like to use this little silicone spatula, or I like to use something that's stiffer, like this, like scraper kind of thing. I think I got this like in the cooking aisle or something. I don't remember what my stand was like, sliding a little bit. Hi there, Shannon. You can also use an old credit card, and that actually will fit pretty well in this container. I actually think that's what I'm going to use today. So I'm just going to get some of this medium, and I'm gonna get it out of here. I've already made a big mess because it got on the side up here. So I'm gonna take a piece of this paper and kind of go over it so it sticks down, but I don't want all of it on there. You might want to wear gloves for this because it does get kind of messy. But it creates a really cool background. And it is a way to have just something on the paper. And I will just rip whatever parts of that doesn't stick. So that you don't have a white piece of paper, which I didn't have, you know, just a plain piece of paper anyway, because it had that writing on there. And where I'm like ripping and things like that, I have all of these just, you know, more interesting kind of things going on. So I really like these little checks. And I will even sometimes keep this like little edges on there just because it creates like more texture, which I'm going to do on the other one. But this will be for the stenciling that I'll do. So I will rip this. I think I'm going to use this one again that has the checks on there because I like that. This matte gel that I'm using, I like it because it is thicker than a matte medium. So if that's what you're used to using, honestly, sometimes I have done this with just a glue stick instead of getting all messy with the medium. And you could do that too. And see, I just like keep turning it around. I'm going to go ahead and keep using this one with the checks because I kind of like that. All of these papers that I'm using are like copy paper thickness. I don't like to use thicker paper when I am collaging just because I feel like the medium doesn't get through it and it just stays, I don't know, it doesn't really become like part of the, oh, I see my name right there for, let's see if I can do this. It doesn't become part of the collage, so I just don't like using like thicker papers. But this matte gel, you could attach it with a thicker paper. So if you want to like really start to get kind of messy and, you know, like I already have glue like all over my hands here, I'm going to rip this because really I just kind of want the lines on there. And now I'm really just trying to get all the places so there's 2 layers of paper. And I'm going to rip that a little bit there. And once this dries, I will straighten it up. So I did not do a video last week because we actually went to a funeral, and I was going to try to fit a video in and do it beforehand or do it when we got back. And you know, I just kind of decided not to do that and that I would just do the video for both of the letters this week, because sometimes you just have to leave enough room and enough time to just be present. And that was what I wanted to do. So that was why I didn't do a live video last week, because it was just really important to be able to be present, and we got to spend time with family that, you know, we wouldn't have had as much time if I would have tried to do a video beforehand, and we would have felt like we were rushing back if I would have like said what time I was going to do a video like later in the day. So I have just a couple of other places that I want to, and then I will let this dry while I'm doing the other. And then I'll show you all of the steps of what I'm going to do to finish this one. And the thing is, on the back, I can still see the size of the paper that I'm using. You could do the same technique with any kinds of papers. Like you could use colored paper, like painted paper. You know, I'm just starting with white because I want that to be the background. Ooh, I have glue all over some of these here. Let's go ahead and use this one with the lines. I think I used all of that checked paper, which I really liked. And I have some of the places that are ripped, and that creates a texture, which we're going to be talking about on the second one. And that's part of why I like doing this, just a background where I have papers. These are kind of like layered in here. I might need some more glue right in there. And because I'm scraping it with this credit card, the old credit card, it's pretty thin, and surprisingly, it dries pretty quickly. I'm going to get some glue like up in there. So I'm just trying to make sure that everything is kind of glued down now. And as long as I keep picking it up, there's, you know, it's not going to stick to the table. Sometimes I will work on a silicone mat, or like one of those cutting boards that I've shown that I get from the Dollar Tree. But as long as I kind of keep picking this up, even if I have medium that goes over the table, it doesn't stick to it. Okay. Still have a little place underneath here. Sometimes I'll just rip that off, but if I can press down hard enough with the credit card, it'll get absorbed into there. And then I will show you what I'm going to do with the stencils as this dries. I might get out my heat gun just to let it dry. I will tell you what, too, this matte gel, or really any kind of medium, I like the surface that it creates on here to be able to paint on and do other things over top of. I was kind of surprised that I would like that. So I'm trying to scrape off, you know, some of the extra off there. One tip that I haven't done with these kind of containers is to use some press and seal to put over top here, so it'll keep this moist, and it'll help me to get off the lid a little bit easier, because I mean, there's all of this around there, and that's why it's not coming. I mean, I was able to get it off, but it took me a little bit. I'm going to grab a baby wipe and put this off to the side and let that dry. So I can kind of wipe off my fingers. That's why if you want to wear gloves, it does make it a little bit easier, because then you're not, you know, getting glue, that matte gel, all over. I don't really, you know, I don't like it to be, like, once that dries, then I can just, like, peel that off. But I just didn't want it to have, like, a whole bunch on there. Okay, the other one that I'm going to do for texture, I want it to be the same size. Now I'm not finding my other, I must have used my other paper that I ripped. That's pretty funny. Let's see if this is the right size. Yeah, I must have used that one. So this is 5.5 by 8.5. Maybe that is the one that I ripped. Okay, here's the texture one that I'm going to do, and it is going to have a little bit to do with the stencil too. So I have probably one of my favorite stencils, and I'll do this side because I don't take very good care of my stencils, and I don't wash them off. I just let the paint dry on there. which, I mean, you can see this is another one of my favorite ones, and I haven't washed it off. I could have a tray with some water in there, and I could put them in there as I use them and wash them off. And sometimes I just don't think to do that. So I have a couple of stencils here. So I'm kind of talking about stencils and texture together, because the technique that I'm going to show you with texture is using a stencil and doing some other things with it. But the stencils that work well for this are ones that have larger openings. Something like this one, I think I just got this from the Dollar Tree. This doesn't really work very well for what I'm going to show you. But this one with the circles, this one that has like the flower shape, I'm going to try this one. It has like these spirals. This is probably one of my favorites. Look, it's a little egg. I put these into my subscription boxes years ago when I was doing those, and I had to keep this one because it was just like one of my favorites. So I'm going to try these 3 stencils, but ones like this, even though I've used this one, I might be able to use, you know, these don't work as well, and you will see why. You can tell this is one of the little shapes that I've used on there quite a lot. So I might try that one. So I am going to use this piece of paper, and I'm going to attach it into my journal after I get finished. And since I already have used my credit card, I'm going to use this stiff scraper. And I have modeling paste. This is by Golden, and I do not have a bigger container of this. This came in like a sample set of Golden. And again, if you want my Amazon shop where I put a lot of the things that I talk about that I recommend, just put Amazon or even AZ in the comment, and I will make sure you have my Amazon link to my shop front, my storefront, because that's where I put a lot of the things in a list that's easy for you to get to about the things that I use. And the sample set of all of these Golden supplies is one of the things that is in a list on my Amazon shop of just like recommended mixed media supplies. And it has been awesome to be able to use some of the Golden products, which are a little pricier, and to try them out. So I think it came with, I mean, I want to say like 15 or 18 products in there, paints and mediums and just all kinds of different things. So I am going to use this modeling paste, light molding. It says molding paste. I call it modeling paste. And I am going to use my circle, and I'm going to squirt it right here on the scraper. I know I don't have too much of this left, so I'll see how much. I'll probably just like do a little sample of it. So I have it on the scraper there, and I just have it on my piece of paper that I'm going to use in my journal, and you won't really be able to see it at first until I add some color to it, but it's adding texture. And so you may be asking, well, why do I want to have texture in my artwork? Let's see if you can, probably can't see those little circles until I add some color on there. And I'm gonna try the spirals and see. I think I want to do the circles in one other spot though. Here's the reason that you want texture. Whether it is realistic texture, like actual texture, which is what I'm doing here with the modeling paste. It's almost gone. Or you can have implied texture. You can have painted texture. And the reason that you want that, I don't know if I have an example of anything like that over here, but the reason that you want that is because it creates interest. And your job as an artist is to create interest. I just want these circles in like a couple of different places. So it's to create interest for the viewer when they're looking at your artwork. So this texture that I'm creating is creating interest so that whoever's looking at this will just be more curious. Like, what is that texture? What is that on there? So I'm going to, I still have a little bit left in there. I'm going to do these spirals and see. I think this one will still work pretty well because it does have bigger openings. And then what I'm doing, since it has like a nice hard edge, I'm scraping it to make sure that the modeling paste is all kind of even. Oh my goodness, I like that. Here's something interesting too. There was paint on that stencil and it kind of came through. Kind of came through the stencil and added to, and I don't care about that at all because this is all going to be just kind of layers anyway. So I would love to know if you like to incorporate realistic texture like this, like actual texture, or do you like painting more texture? Like I think of the texture of like feathers, on a bird and painting that, with a dry brush, and it creates the texture and it picks up maybe the texture of the canvas. So do you like realistic, more texture, or do you like painting texture? I probably like the more realistic, and that's probably why I like mixed media, because I feel like I can do that more with mixed media. And then I'm going to put a little bit in here, and then I'm going to let this dry, and probably my stenciling will be dry. So I have just enough left to do a little bit. So I think I'm just going to have the stencils of the spirals and the circles. I would try to wipe that off because the modeling paste, oh, I have just a little bit more on there. The modeling paste does harden up. I will probably do that after I get off the video, and I will, I'll wash these off. Okay. Ooh, that really scraped off a lot of the paint on there. So I can take my baby wipe and just wipe it off. This one. Sue says that she likes realistic. She likes to paint on. So other than feathers, what other kind of realistic textures do you like? So this is all pretty much dry. I'm going to come to the back and cut it to the size of the paper that'll fit into my journal. You could keep it with all the different edges, and you could frame it. You could put it in a frame that's larger, and it could be uneven edges. And I think that that's a lot of the way that Jenny Grant works, is they're different sizes. And I will probably keep these little scraps because they're all already kind of glued together. I'll just add them back into my tub of my white papers. So now I have this paper that has all these different just white on there, and there's writing, and there's lines, and there's the little checks that I liked, and just all kinds of different things on there. And it has just a little bit, you can probably see like a little bit of a sheen on there. Sue is talking about like tea bags, cheesecloth, different things that you can use for texture. I was even kind of thinking like, other than feathers that you would paint realistically, what are some other things that you paint, that you like to paint that are realistic? I think about like the texture on rocks, the texture on wood, the technique, I guess, of creating wood, that takes a little bit of practice. It takes a little bit of practice to make it look like pieces of wood. So while I'm letting my texture dry, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use a stencil now on this one. And I'm going to come back to my spiral stencil, and I'm going to use black paint, but I'm just using like this Craft Smart paint. It's pretty inexpensive and it's pretty transparent, which is what I want. Kathy likes the threads on a mixed media piece. And when you say threads, do you mean actual like fabric threads? I'm using these little makeup sponges, and I don't wash these off either. So this end is the black that I already used, but it's stiff. So I just take a pair of scissors and I just cut that off. And then I just throw that away. So I can, you know, get a few uses out of this just by cutting it down. So I'm going to take this black and just kind of tap it down. And here's one of the things about stencils. This is very important because I want you to remember this about stencils. Some people don't like to use stencils because they feel like they have paint go under the stencil. Oh, gotcha, Wanda. She can't use the sound. I get it. You can watch. But some people don't like using stencils because they feel like the paint goes underneath. And here is the trick for that. Using these makeup sponges is one of the ways. But do you see, I don't have dripping paint off of here. I actually let it absorb into the sponge. You saw me tapping it off a lot, offloading the paint so I'm getting it into the sponge. And it is so much better to build up thin layers than try to get all of the paint on there at one time. I just want thin layers. So what I'm going to do is just kind of tap that on there, and it's going to be a little bit transparent. I love that little spiral one. I probably have enough paint on here, but I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more on there. But this isn't going to be like a really intense black on there. So again, I'm going to put the stencil in 3 places. And I think I'm going to use this one also. And that turned out to be a little bit darker on that one. Oh, I like that. But there's a few places where that went under. And the more that I can tap off and unload the paint, the less I have that happen. So if I just kind of tap down and not try to press down so that the paint doesn't really go underneath the stencil, I have a much better, you know, it doesn't go underneath as much. Really like how that one came out. I'm going to do one more over here. So this is kind of a process that Jenny Grant follows, and I have done some of her projects before and kind of use this same process. So I'll do the collage, and then I'll do stenciling. I might not do it with black. Maybe I would do it with colors. I'm going to do just a couple more little kind of places to fill in. I like that little center flower. And just kind of fill in. And I can still see some of the things underneath there, a few of the checks, but mainly I have like this black and white on there. Now I'm going to bring in some color. That doesn't take very long to really dry because I put it on so thin. Okay, one of the other things that I have, so that is the stencil part, is transparent things. So I think Sue had mentioned before about tea bags and cheesecloth and different things that are transparent. Moving some of these things out of the way. So I'm going to show you some of the different things that I have that are transparent, because I'm going to add some of those to this. And you may be thinking, like, why are you doing all of that and then covering it up? Because they're transparent layers, because that black is more of a transparent black, it's not really going to cover up, I can still see the layers underneath. And when I put this tissue paper, the transparent materials, I'm still going to see the layers underneath. And again, that creates interest. When someone is looking at your artwork, it creates interest. So I have little pieces of tissue paper that I have painted. I think that's the right size on there. That I have used acrylic inks on. I have this one that I used acrylic inks and painted. I have just different types of paper, and there's some of the pearlescent kind of materials on there. This one is a rice paper that just reacts completely differently. I have all different kinds of tissue paper, and tissue paper that I painted on, and inexpensive tissue paper. And then I actually save, you know how when you get the tissue paper, the end of it, so like I painted on some of there. I like to do with the black, and then I can rip out, you know, parts of that. I love these little stars. That's not exactly transparent, so I don't think I'll be using that one. Oh, here's more of that same paper that I painted. So I might actually use those pieces. I love these little pink pieces. Here are some of my tea bags. So when you drink tea, like save, I actually have 2 of them over here. Save the tea bags, let them dry out, cut them, pull them apart. These I have to actually cut. And you can remove the tea, and then you have this transparent paper. I really like this one. It's a raspberry tea, so it has like this pink, can't see it on the camera very well, but like some pink colors in there. So save those. And then I have this tissue paper that I wrote with gold. I think I might use that. This tissue paper I love. It has little sparkles in there. You can get tissue paper with the patterns. I think this was some kind of a rice paper, tea bag paper that I stained with like coffee. Oh, I like this little tissue. And then sometimes you can get pieces of tissue or deli paper when you go to a restaurant. And this was a piece of paper that they actually had underneath, and I pulled it out from underneath there before it got anything on there. And I've used it. It was like a taco place. And I just love the different fonts and the black lettering on there. So I think that I'm going to use some of this paper. And I might use some of this one, some of the pinks, and these pieces. So I kind of have like pink and the green colors. So, oh yeah, the tissue paper. Oh, good. So collage, and then I did stenciling. And now I'm going to do tissue. And when I do tissue paper, I don't like to use the matte gel. I actually just yesterday got a magic blue Yoo-hoo stick. And what I like to do is just make it very random. And I will just kind of in some of the areas where I still have the white. I'm just going to have like little pieces. And I'm going to show you. I can still see the black underneath there. And I could either rip off what didn't get glued down, or I can just go ahead and... So this tissue paper right now would be difficult for me to paint on top of or do anything because it doesn't have the matte medium on it. So I'm going to show you kind of what I do with that. This is definitely the kind of project where you could do a few parts of it and then you could come back to it. right? Like I could do the collage, let it dry, a couple of hours later, next day, come back to it. I could do the stenciling, you know, and then maybe work on something else and then come back to it when the stenciling. So I like doing a project from start to finish, but when I'm doing something like this, sometimes it does work better if I do it in, you know, multiple different steps. So I'm going to use one more. I like to do things in threes. Tell me if, so, you know, I did 3 of the spiral stencil. I did 3 of the mandala little stencil. And that's just something that I don't know, I tend to do things in threes. So I like that little pop of red against the black on there. And I'm going to use a little bit of, I think I might use this one actually with the little bit of black on there. This was just regular tissue paper that I used for this one. And just painted it and just let it dry. I'm going to be doing like a botanical, like her example here, kind of these leaves. So this green, I think, will work really well for that. And I like some of these pieces that have this pearlescent look to them. Oh, I'm really liking this next to the red that's already on there too. You could definitely glue down this tissue paper with the matte medium. I don't know. It's so fragile. Sometimes I like putting it down on here first. And I really like that one a lot. I am going to do a little bit of this pink. And some from this paper here too. You can do as many pieces as you want. I'm just kind of realizing that I want a little bit more tissue paper on there. I figured because I was doing 2 letters today that this video will be a little bit longer than I normally am on here. Yeah, because it's already like 11:15. Oh, I like how I can see that through the ink there. And then let's do this one kind of in the middle here. And then I will come back to the texture. Okay, that's the only place that I have that blue. I feel like I need a few little pieces of more of that. And I'm going to overlap it over top of this one and then see. And just going to do it down here. So now it starts to have some color in there. And I will make sure that my lid is on here. And I think because I am going to do like botanicals, I am going to come in with some other color. I'm going to do some of this ink. Just in a few places, and it's going to kind of react with the tissue paper. I haven't put anything over the tissue paper. And this is transparent also. All of these layers are transparent so that I can still see, you know, what's underneath. Ooh, that's kind of helping glue down a little bit of the tissue paper on there. So that is very subtle. where that ink is. I can still see the black underneath there. And I like that it's kind of sticking down the tissue paper, which I wasn't expecting. And it's coloring some of the white tissue paper there. I'm actually going to do a little bit more in places and then let it sit there. And then I'm going to come to the texture. I'm going to shake it a little bit. I feel like it should be... Lori says she loves this creation because I am seriously just playing. And this next step after that, you'll see where it starts to come together. But all of this is just layering and texture and, you know, really the stenciling, because it's black, I feel like kind of stands out on here. So I'm going to let some of that green now be a little bit thicker in there. And now it'll read a little bit more as green. Gosh, I love the black stencils in there. And all the different layers that are on there. Okay, I'm going to let this one dry. Yeah, I love that combination of the greens and blues and then those pops of the pink and then just a few little spots of the red on there. Okay. For this one, the texture, it is pretty dry. And I'm going to come in with another ink. I thought that I had it over here. Which is my favorite one, and it's this quinacridone magenta. And you're going to start to see where the texture is on here. I love that the inks have these little pipettes on there. And I want you to watch when I put this on here how it reacts to the stencil. And I just have my paintbrush with a little bit of water. And this will probably become another, boy, that ink just kind of goes all around in there. I can tell when I have a little bit less on there, it picks up the texture a little bit more. But this will probably become like some kind of a background paper. I might even pull off this texture in places where I just want like a little bit. This quinacridone magenta is intense. Like you can see how vivid, how like vibrant it is. And even with the writing that's on the paper, that just creates like this other layer, not exactly of texture on there, but just more interest back there. Oh, it really shows up with the black over here. So if I wanted this to spread around a little bit more, I could spray this with some water. It's really intense over in here especially. I don't think that my stencils were, the texture of the modeling paste was completely dry on here, but I will show you a little bit more of the texture. And there's still so much of this quinacridone magenta on here. It's so much like on my brush even still. And sometimes I will take the ink that, you know, anything that's left on my brush and I'll just put it on some other, you know, even like these scrap pieces of paper that I had from cutting around or anything like that, just so that I don't feel like I'm wasting my paint. And here's what I'll tell you, by putting it in the water, now my water is more pink. If I get rid of a lot of that on paper, that's less that goes into my water and my water stays cleaner. So that is the one for texture where I've used the modeling paste, and then I will use that for something. But I'm going to finish this one over here as it is drying. I saw a little piece right here that needed to be glued down. And I do have a piece of tissue that is over the edge that I'll have to cut a little bit. So let me dry this. and I'm going to draw on my shapes. The ink does take longer to dry just because it's more fluid and wet. But I'll cut the edges. There's a little piece of tissue that's not glued down over there too. A lot of times what I will do if I create a background like this that I really like I'm really liking a lot of the things about this one and the black showing through and the layers, I will take a photo of it so that then I can print out my own backgrounds and I can reuse them. And this would be a fun collage paper to print. I do that a lot of times in my Start Creating Mixed Media membership. I have papers that are in there that they can print out and they can be able to use for collage paper. Sometimes I'll just put random ones in there. Okay. If I get to the point where I don't want to wait for this to dry, I will take a piece of paper and I will just press down on there. I felt like it was still wet in a couple of places, but maybe it's just the, yeah, see that one was still wet over there for sure. You could do this with a piece of paper towel or something too. And it's not going to matter too much that there may still be some places that are wet. I'm going to trim up these sides here. And I'll show you the last couple steps to finish off this one. I kind of decide like which direction I like for it to be. It's going to be going into my journal horizontally. And the idea that I have for my botanical that I'm going to draw on there is this. So I'm going to kind of, you know, draw it as if like this is the orientation. And I actually like, this is my bottom. So I'm going to draw it going this way. And I'm going to draw it with a Stabilo pencil. You can use a regular pencil. I kind of like when the Stabilo pencil reacts with water. So you'll see with the next step how it will start to react. So I'm gonna, oh, there's places that aren't quite dry. So this is gonna be one leaf in here. And you'll see this as I do the next step. You'll see this a little bit more. You can kind of use what's already on there, like this ended up being a lot of the green inside that one. So I can kind of see where these are. I put basically 5 different leaves on there. And I'm going to take some white, and this is just more inexpensive. The inexpensive paints tend to be a little bit more transparent. Like, right, they don't cover up really well. So I like using those when I'm trying to do something where I want to see the layers. But if you want it a little more watery, more thinned out, you can add water to it to thin it out. I'll probably add a little bit to this one. Or like I have this like flow medium. You can add something like that to it and it would make it a little bit thinner. Because I don't want to lose all of the layers. So, what kind of printer? It's an HP printer and it's a laser printer. I don't print that often, but you're right. It does use, you know, probably more ink, but I forget how the the laser printers a little bit different. So do you see how this white, it's still really thin? And what I'm doing is I'm going around the leaves that I just drew so that they start to now become like the focal point. And I'm just kind of careful that I don't pick up too much of that white paint so that it doesn't cover up everything that I've done there, and I can still see, you know, underneath. And if I feel like it's getting too thick, I'll add a little bit of, oh, I just painted over that leaf. That's what I get for trying to talk and work at the same time. I'm going to come in with a wet paintbrush, just water, and kind of put over that. I just painted right over it. Okay. Let me be more careful. I'm going to go around kind of like where the leaves are so I don't do that again. Because that's what happened. I was just painting and not like paying attention to where the leaves were. So I didn't hold this up to the camera or anything to be able to, you know, have this as a paper that I could print more than one time. But you see how I can still see a lot of the background in there? Let's see, this is all. And I don't even mind if things aren't completely dry and they start to blend. And a little bit down here. And then if I really wanted to make these leaves stand out a little bit more, sometimes I'll come around the edges especially and add a little bit more to anywhere where you have a contrast. It's going to define it like a little bit more. I knew that you were sticking around just to see how this would all come together. And finally, it starts to come together. So I'm just trying to keep like a little bit of the stems and things around in there. I love how some of the leaves have the stencil in there. Some have some of the color. And I would probably just stop with this. There are some other steps that you can do, but I'm really kind of liking just up to this point. I am going to come into this one right here that I painted over. Let me see if I can define that one a little bit more. You know, like on the edges where I want those to stand out a little bit more. And even though this is the stenciling, I hope that you can see, and I'll hold this up, a lot of the texture that's in here. From the tissue paper and all the different layers. And I can still see some of the lines. I'm sure if I looked, I could see I see some lettering over here, some of the checks that I really liked. So I think you can see like a lot of that texture in there is from the tissue paper because it, you know, is just naturally wrinkly. If I wanted to, I could come back in and maybe I will do a little bit of that. The ink, the green ink that I used is very transparent. So I may come in with just a little bit of green, like regular green paint. And then it's almost 11:30, so I'm going to finish this up and I'll show you what the texture one looks like as it's dried. So I'm going to come in with just a little bit of this paint. Again, it's texture paint, so it's still pretty transparent. And I may just come in with a little bit of that green. You know, just to kind of like define some of the edges on these leaves, and especially this one. Where I kind of painted over it. I'm not sure what I think that was a mixture on the tissue paper of a blue and a green, because I feel like I need a few pops of that in places too. I don't think I'm going to do anything, maybe kind of right down in here. And maybe just a little bit on this one. Yeah, I feel like I need a little darker. Here's the other thing that I'll do sometimes. I use that Stabilo marker, or Stabilo pencil. And I may just come in, oh, that's what it needed. It just needed to be defined a little bit more. And the Stabilo will go over just about anything. And see, that one needed to be defined a little bit more there. You could definitely draw these leaves onto a canvas and you could paint them. However, doing all of these layers with the stencils and the different papers and the tissue just creates interest. It's just a different look than, you know, if you were going to paint these type of leaves. Now that the Stabilo is kind of wet, it in some places is creating like this darker, which I really like. Okay, that's what it needed. It was just to define those leaves a little bit. And so now they really kind of stand out. But see how like all the layers and they're still there, even though I covered them up with white. That white paint was so thin that you could still see through that. So I'm loving how that looks. I am going to try to mix probably a blue ink that I have and a green and maybe get a little bit more and maybe just add in a few of the leaves that intense. I could come back in with the actual tissue paper of that color too. So that is for stenciling. Most people think of stenciling as like an image that you are stenciling. I don't usually use stencils that way. I use them for the texture and the just breaking up and the pattern and things like that. And then this one for the texture for the modeling paste, which wasn't completely dry, but I love the real subtle. And one of the things that I could do with a dry brush, let me get a dry one here. I can come into that white paint that I had on here and get just a little bit. Like it's really pretty dry. And I could come over and see how I'm kind of laying the paintbrush like on its side. And it will start to catch some of those raised areas of that stencil. So you can kind of, or not stencil, the stencil, but the modeling paste. So some of these areas just depend on how much I wanted that to stand out. So I like how it, you know, kind of brings forward some of those. Oh, I got too much on there. You know, it kind of brings forward that modeling paste. So that's kind of fun depending on how much that I want that to come forward. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed stenciling, texture, and just how to kind of go from start to finish for that project that was inspired by Jenny Grant. And you can see how she did the white in the background. She has, and then she kind of came back in with some more stencils and different things like that. I don't think that I'm going to come back into mine at all. I think I'm going to leave it how it is, except for maybe bringing in a little bit of that in a few of the leaves, especially like this one. I feel like that needs a little pop of something right in that one. And I hope you had fun just kind of just watching the progression of how to start something and just work through, just like with the leaves, how I kind of had to work through that it needed that stabilo at the end, some of those extra lines. Whenever you're creating, try to be flexible with whatever the end result. Like, I didn't know exactly what this was going to look like. I knew kind of the process that I wanted to go through. And sometimes I find my artwork to be much more successful. I don't feel so hung up on getting it perfect when I have kind of a process but not a finished product in mind. I definitely use, inspiration. I use designs where there is an end product that I'm trying to get to, but I'm still flexible as I go through it, that it might change. I might leave something out. I might change something up. So I have a destination, if you will, but I'm still flexible on how to get there and how it might look at the end different from the idea that I start with, or the inspiration, or the traced even image on there. So that would be my suggestion to you, is to just be flexible when you're creating. So this video will be on replay on my YouTube. If you're not over there subscribing, please go over there and you can hit the replay. You can watch the entire playlist of the ABCs of art, and you can hopefully be inspired to start creating, keep creating, and just ideas for you to spend some time being creative. So I will see you next Monday for Memorial Day, and we will do the letter U. We will be up to the letter U. So I'll see you then.